There we go. Okay, cool. And now we're recording and kind of ready to go. So I'm going to turn off my camera because bandwidth becomes an issue if I'm doing both, especially with my college age kids home. So you'll not see my smiling face until the end, and we'll kind of jump in. Peter, do you want to kind of give us a primary kind of a rambling open, and then I'll start jumping in from there.
Yeah, so this is some of you have been on the other ones that we've done. We started doing these a couple of months ago. We try to do one event a month, a not sales-oriented event, or mostly for our customers, but also for some. I know there's some prospective customers on the month, just to bring topics to you that we think would be of interest, and share experiences, as we will today with Jon from Feedall. Here's a customer that did something, here's a problem that we fixed. These are typically aimed at, more than anything else, they're aimed at manufacturers. So that's the issue we have here. Last time, a month ago, we did one on Salesforce's CPQ, which is their very good, but very, big, complicated, expensive system for doing quotes and managing it. It's a great system, but it's not for everybody. So we've kind of called this quoting for the rest of us, which is starting out with Salesforce's. We'll talk about Salesforce's standard quoting that comes along with Salesforce, but then using a third-party product called Conga Composer to actually do the generation of the quote and pushing it out. And we did some really interesting stuff with Jon. That's why we wanted to have him here today. So that's kind of the goal, is to show you what can be done in Salesforce using not a terribly expensive third-party add-on, and not any custom code, just configuration to make really great-looking proposals and quotes. So that's what we're here for today.
Cool. And so you see the players in the band. I'm here. Peter's here. Chris Pinto, who did the work with Jon at Feedall, is here, and he's going to kind of be the color announcer. He'll be the Tony Romo to Jon's kind of Jon's calling the game, right? And so essentially what we want to do is cover sort of the standard Salesforce quoting function, like Peter said, and then Conga Composer. I would argue that one of the things that also happens with customers who have reasonably sophisticated quoting is that they just forego Salesforce altogether and use it in Excel. And so kind of keep that in the back of their head when we talk about this as well. This can absolutely replace that piece and get more people involved in the system, get more people kind of normalized and kind of rigid in terms of how the quote works. So there's some good on the side of kind of jumping into Salesforce that's not necessarily just the document itself, but we can cover that here in a second. And then Jon's going to take us through kind of some slides about what they did, and then he's going to do a demo for us of his instance in Salesforce, which is really cool. We'll kind of get a look at how Conga kind of functions within the four walls of Salesforce, and then we've got 5 minutes at the end if anybody has any questions. So let's just jump right in. Oh, right. But first, so I'm not above doing a shameless plug. And so all of you, I think, on this call know who BlackIron is. But if anybody's new on the phone, we're a Salesforce partner in good standing for 17 years. So we've been being part of Salesforce since before Salesforce was cool, right? And in those 17 years, we've done 2,000 projects for lots of different customers. Some of the projects are small. Some of the projects have gone a year and a half. So we've done some really sophisticated, complicated stuff with Salesforce. We're PM experts, 2 PMI certified resources on staff, but we've also got people with all the products kind of put together. Okay, I need to send somebody a note here in a second, so I'll do that as soon as I hang up, Chris, and you jump on. And we're local, right? We're in Connecticut, ostensibly, although with COVID, it really means we're from New Hampshire down to just outside of Philly. And we'll see what happens as this kind of breaks up. But we are, in the Eastern time zone and available to help customers kind of here. So if you've got any questions about that, please feel free to reply to the event, and we'll take it from there. All right, Peter, I'm going to jump down one, and then I'm going to reply to a guy and get him on the meeting. So,
okay. So I thought we'd start with one slide at least to talk about standard Salesforce quoting. So I don't know, but everybody, you may not know it's there. So I thought, okay, what are the pros? What are the pros and cons of Salesforce quoting? So the pros are that you already own it. It's simple. It's there, and it's very, very useful. But it has certain limitations. So it's simple to set up. It's virtually no configuration. There you can create some templates, and it as long as if you the next bullet down, as long as you have kind of simple discrete products. So if you sell 10 of these, 10 of those, or services like we do, we also use a similar functionality. So that's pretty much what it is. And it's a great way to manage a simple quoting process. If you have an opportunity, somebody says, how much will it be? You send a quote out. You can track multiple quotes in Salesforce. So that's great. The cons are it's not, and John will talk to this, it's not very flexible at all in terms of customization. You kind of get what you get. You get the forms. You can't really manage the font. You can't put images in it. You can't make it really kind of slick looking. You can make a serviceable quote. It looks like an invoice. Essentially, it has line items. It has description. You can add your T's and C's to it, but that's what it is. It's not well suited for configuration type things where you put a couple of products together necessarily. It definitely can't do images. It can't do a little bit more complex stuff. It is not. It's that's why they have CPQ. But it is. So my final point is, it's kind of like the original Model T Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. So it is what it is, and it works for a lot of people. But so to go to the next slide, Dan. So the issue is that it doesn't do everything. So when we put in John's, it was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I guess, John, where we came in, we replaced ACT for them and put it in. And one of the things that John really had issues with, and he'll talk about that, was quotes. So here's a little bit. John, I'll throw it over to you. You can kind of go through a recap, a review of who Feedall is and what you guys do, and then we'll jump into the actual slides.
Thanks, Peter. We put in Salesforce about a little over a year ago. And a little bit about Feedall, so you kind of get a sense of our size and scale and the level of work we wanted to put into this. But this business has been around a long, long time. I was fortunate to acquire it from the grandson of the founder a couple years ago, and they make niche automation equipment. And so most of which is semi-custom equipment, and they sell to a large demographic of customers, mostly industrial, but blue chip customers such as Harley Davidson and John Deere, to smaller customers as integrators. And so my effort at the company, it started with how do we continue to make improvements in systems and processes. Salesforce was one of them, and we put that in place. And as we did that, we felt compelled to take a look at how we were generating quotes. So if you want to go to the next slide. And one of the challenges that we faced was we didn't feel our current quotes were communicating the value of our offering. Many times when you or your salespeople send out quotes, the customer's first line of impression is the information that's contained in the proposal or quote. And so we wanted to make sure that those quotes were resembling our brand and the professionalism that we do every day from a manufacturing of the equipment. And then the second challenge that we really wanted to address was turnaround of our quotes. Since we're a highly engineered company, we tended to spend a lot of time customizing individual quotes for customers, and the lead time to get those quotes to the customers tended to be much longer than my expectation it should have been. So, our solution was on both of those two challenges was let's work with Chris from BlackIron, who was kind of deploying our Salesforce, on how do we improve the output of our quotes. And so I thought it'd be interesting to kind of give you a visual of where we were and then kind of come to where we are currently. When 3 years ago, when I acquired the company, this is an example of a proposal that was generated for customers. And so the intent is not for you to really comprehend what's on there, but visually you could see it's a 2-page quote. This is a proposal for equipment that's $45,000. And so from my standpoint, just by looking at it, it doesn't really resemble a $45,000 proposal, right? And so a lot of the information is there, but it's not really highlighting the professionalism, and what we're actually quoting. And so that was the starting point. And so everything was generated out of Word. ACT was our CRM at the time, and did not populate any of the information right out of our CRM. And then the quote wasn't stored anywhere. I mean, we stored it on a local premise after we generated. So any changes that were made after the fact, we weren't capturing. And like I mentioned before, I just think the image and the lack of visuals was an impediment to the business. So when we first rolled out Salesforce, the out of the box functionality on generating quotes is this, and this is just an image of it. And so I thought it was a little bit of a step forward. It was pulling the right content out of Salesforce CRM, whether it was the product information or the customer information or the specific opportunity information. But it was really inflexible, and Chris can probably acknowledge that, because I kept on asking him to do stuff that was just not possible. I mean, the image that's on there, I think we took 2 iterations to get that image on there, and it wasn't big enough. It wasn't in the right spot. And so while Salesforce had, this functionality, it wasn't solving the 2 issues that I had previously mentioned. You couldn't really customize the text, the font sizes, the font. The format was, like I mentioned before, kind of really difficult to customize, and Chris probably can articulate that here in a second as well. And there's just multiple limitations on how many lines and what the pricing output would look like. And so this is kind of out of the gate what we first started with. And I don't know if Chris, if you had anything to add at this point.
Chris may be muted, so well, I'll go over on chat and talk to him. But how about we do the grand reveal? Does that sound like a?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Here we go.
The grand reveal. So, and so this is what we came up with in order to provide that level of flexibility into the quote. We added this package called Conga that, in my opinion, I'm not an IT person, seemed like it was very seamless integration. I don't think there was a lot of customization, and so our quote really, I thought, took a really nice format, and there's a lot of different things you can do from a formatting perspective. It was word based, which was really helpful for me, and it really generated what I thought was a much more professional looking quote with the right amount of information pulling in from Salesforce. And so this is what it has generated, and I'm happy to kind of walk through how this works. But at the end of the day, it did help solve both of those problems that we initially highlighted. This is a second page on there. It really allowed us to think a little bit differently about quotes that sell, right? And so that's a term that we coined internally at Feedall. We really wanted our quotes to sell the product, obviously in conjunction with the effort of our salespeople. But if our salespeople weren't there, we wanted to be able to articulate the value of what we were selling and what it looked like and how it fit into their organization. And in my opinion, the other thing I put on this slide was that, this is, for me, this is continue to be evolving as far as what we can do next coming out and improving our quoting. We're looking at e-signature software, so that we don't just generate a quote and attach it to an email, which for our industry, which is fine. But we are looking at that as an option, as well as allowing customers to click on links within our photos that would link to our YouTube page and show the machine running. And so those little things we're continued to evaluate and improve on with our quoting, our quotes and our quoting software.
Okay.
Jon, question for you. JW with PSI Engineering. Can you tell me what format you said it outputs to? Is it a PDF or is it a Word? I heard you say it works in Word, but does it output to PDF? Or the real question underneath the question is, how do you keep people from manipulating it without your control?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it exports it out of Word, and then we create a PDF. And I'll go through that here in a second. But we, like you're saying, we never want to send a quote out that comes back in a different price, right? And so obviously the price, they were to change the price, I'm sure they're not going to lower it. But and so we protect that with a PDF. We just PDF everything before we send it out. And I think one of the other points that you highlight, which is an important one, I was always under the frame of reference that I wanted everything exported out of Salesforce to be perfect, right? I wanted it to be 100% complete. And what I found was the 80-20 rule is a better perspective to approach this with, meaning that if you can export out of Salesforce 80% of the content and be able to kind of manipulate the other 20%, especially in our line of business where we're, highly customized equipment, that's a win. And so when we export it out, and I'll show you that in a second with the demo, there may be a situation where we have to add a picture that wasn't pulling in, or you'll see that we wanted to validate the lead time, and so it comes out as a static number, and we have to manually put the lead time in. So a couple of those little things we want to do manually after it's exported out of Word. So we make those slight changes, make a PDF, and then we save the PDF back to Salesforce.
Okay, that's my thought too. You can't get perfect. If we can get the numbers in and make the math look right and account for that, the lipstick, if you will, on the pig we can put that on.
It's such a great.
I think
that's
such
a great.
Jon, I was going to say, yep.
I was going to say it's such a great point and great question, because I perseverated over that a long time, and I'm a data guy. I'm like, well, you should just generate everything exactly perfect. But if you go into it with the perspective that you just mentioned, that it's the 80-20 rule, I think it's a lot more healthy outcome, because that's where we arrived. And it took me mentally a little bit of time to get around. That's what was going to be.
And then I think, so Chris, Jon had to drop. He's on his way to go see his daughter graduate from college. He said the noise in the background was going to be distracting. He's probably right. So, but I think I remember that he did a bunch of validation rules and stuff around how the quote got created, right? So you couldn't get yourself in a whole lot of trouble inside of the four walls of Salesforce before the quote was kicked out, right? I mean,
yeah, and it's really not that. I mean, I'm not an IT person, but I know how. If I wanted to bring in a different feel to the quote, like the customer's fax number, which we don't bring in, but if we wanted to bring in the fax number, I know how to add that to the quote. It's just a simple little code to the template that I can even handle. And so what I found is, simple changes to the current existing template are just not hard for everyday users to manage.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. So okay, good.
Before you go on, Nancy at Orion, your cover page image on the back, is that something that you switch out for different products, or is that just one standard cover page?
So it's one standard cover page, but it would not be difficult to have multiple templates that would have different formatting or different images for that. For an example, our parts quotes do not have that front cover page. But if we wanted a different product line to have different parts, it would just be a different template that would be merged into the data.
I think that looks really sharp.
But one thing, this is Peter, but one thing to remember that John did, and what we did for him, is that the pictures, the photos, the images that do come in, those do come in from Salesforce. So there, if you put product XYZ on the quote, it's gonna, so on the second page of your quote, John, those images do come in. So they change dynamically with the quote. It's just the cover page doesn't.
Yeah, and so images is one thing that I was very adamant that we needed to improve on. And so if I can just touch on that 1 second, Peter, there's 3 different images. One is a static image like the cover, which is part of the template. One is we have different product images for all of our products that pull in. And so that's stored in our product database, and we have hundreds of different products and hundreds of the images that are brought in. So we don't have to copy and paste those in there. And the third is each opportunity has a customer specific part that we're evaluating. And so we have the ability to save those images we get from the customer into Salesforce. And so when we generate the proposal for that specific opportunity, it pulls that specific image in from that opportunity. So it's pretty neat. It's pretty slick because it's pulling different images. So you don't have to, remember to cut and paste from an email that someone sent you a part image.
Great, thanks, John.
So should I go into the demo now? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me share my screen here. So Peter, I just confirmed you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. And so this is the Feedall homepage for Salesforce.com. And if you have Salesforce, you have something similar. If you don't, you can certainly customize this to any way you want. And so what I wanted to do is just take you through an opportunity that we just recently quoted and show you how it generates that proposal right out of Salesforce. And so our opportunities are numbered. And so here's one sales opportunity that we are just in the middle of. And this data that we capture here in the opportunity stage includes a lot of details about the opportunity, and then it gives details about the specific application that we're quoting. And then we did something really slick down here for our sales team, is put together an opportunity score, which is our level of attractiveness that we feel. So any 0 to 100. So if it's 89, it means it's really an attractive opportunity for us, helps us prioritize. So it has all of this information that's part of the opportunity, and then you can generate a variety of different proposal or different quotes off of that. And so the one that's syncing here. So here is the quote that was being put together in Salesforce, which has the detailed information about what product we're proposing and any other additional products that we would like. And so most of this information I'm showing you is being pulled from the product page, so you don't have to key all this in. And so in order for us to quote this, it's really simple. There's this button up here that says quote. You hit that button, some magic happens in the background with Conga, which I can never fully understand, but Chris did a really nice job of integrating it. You come to this page where it just confirms that this is the customer that you're sending it, that is part of that you're sending the quote to. And all you got to do is hit this merge and download button where it merges all of the data into the Word template. And then it down at the bottom left-hand corner, the Word opens and it generates this proposal. And so what you see here is the template that pulls in the data from ACT. So it pulls in who the company representative is that is quoting it. And on the first page, it pulls in, who the customer is, all their specific information. And then it pulls in, the proposal date and when it's valid. And there's a way you can set that so it's 45 days after you propose it or 30 days after you propose it. And then we put a second page in here on the quote, which kind of highlights the different sections of the quote. And I have an executive summary where this is one area that before we send it, we have to fill in. And that for me is a check and balance where we have the total price. They have to key that in, and then they have to validate that the shipping lead time is 14 to 16 weeks. On the second page here, we have customer application information. Since we quote custom equipment, it's really important for us to reiterate what we heard from them that they want us to accommodate from an application standpoint. And so all this information was gathered during the sales interaction meetings and put into Salesforce, and any specific notes, which are all part of Salesforce. This is all self-generating. And so that's our confirmation that we're quoting exactly what they want. And then on the third page, it has what we're proposing is our equipment. So it pulls this picture in from a product page. It pulls this description of what that equipment is from the product page. And then on the fourth page, if we had a layout we wanted to add later, we can, like a plant layout, we can add that. And then in this section here, it really gets into details of what specifically we're quoting. And so the 80-20 rule applies pretty heavily here, meaning that this information is all pulled in from the product page where we have standard features and customized features, but there may be something we see here that may be a little bit different, right? And so, 16-inch wide channel tower, right? And so that we may have to make an adjustment to that standard language. But for the most part, I think we've done a pretty good job in all of our products to make sure that we're capturing everything from a standard perspective. But like I mentioned before, it doesn't come out 100% correct. It takes a little bit of user interface and for people to think to make sure that we're quoting everything exactly right to get it perfect. And then I'll focus on the terms and pricing page here. Right here. And so these tables are generated out of Salesforce. And so what you see here is that there's two products that we're pricing. One is this 4800 elevator hopper. They want one of them. The price is $189,000. The other one is a conveyor model 1650. We want two of those. And so it extends that price to get to a total price of $201,000. And so Chris worked with me pretty heavily on this part because I also wanted to make sure that we were able to quote options. And so under options, you'll see we have a 1-year warranty, and we priced that at $2,500. 1-year additional warranty, excuse me, or $2,500. And so why I point that out is I was really concerned that we quote a lot of options to our equipment. And I didn't want our funnel to be overinflated. And so when I sum our funnel of all the opportunities that we quoted, it only keys off of this 201,000. It doesn't include any of the option prices. And so that may sound like a, not that big of a deal. It may not be for you. For us, we didn't want our funnel to say we had $4 million in the funnel, but $1 million of those were options that we weren't sure that we were actually going to get. So we didn't want that to be overstated. And then obviously you have some terms and conditions language most people put on here. This is what we felt was the most compelling information we could put in here. Once again, the delivery is something in our industry people focus on a lot. This is where we want to make sure we understand that this is correct before the quote goes out. That's why it's in brackets. And then the last page is a static page where we just describe our project management process and how we manage their project throughout the 16 weeks. And so that's what's generated. And like I said, we're continuing looking at ways to make it even better. But I would say that we've gotten a lot of compliments about the level of information that we're providing to customers right out of the gate, and just the overall feel and look of it. They get a better sense of what we're providing as a proposal than we did ever before. And so they have a firm understanding of what we're quoting. I think it aligns to our brand. And the other thing I wanted to accomplish with this was our ability to turn quotes around quicker is it's the metric we measure for ourselves, and it's obviously been improved for us because it's less customization of every quote, and it's more how do we automate the process, and that's kind of how we did it.
Great, thanks, Jon.
Okay.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much. That was terrific. All right, so I'm going to, at this point, we're kind of into the Q&A part. So I wanted to see if there were any questions and kind of help take some of that piece from anybody. John's happy to answer questions. Peter and I are happy to answer questions. So, fire away, stump the band.
I'll lead the band for a second
Thanks, Jada.
So, two-parter here. First is, do you have to have Professional Edition and CPQ active to do this, Ian?
You have to have at least Professional Edition because we're using products and quotes in Salesforce to draw this particular document. That said, actually you have to, so it's got to be at least Professional Edition. Yeah.
All right, and then this one's for Jon. I'm going to the trumpet section since you're the top of the band here. What I'd like to know is, how did you step change? How did you change management, control change management on this? Or were you a little bit like me and you said, we got all of this ready, and then Machiavellian style, you sowed the salt in the ground and said, that's how we did it, and we're going to do it this way moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important comment for anyone that's looking to make a change. I always say the fastest way to create enemies is instill change in an organization. So, it's tough. And so the way we did it was to have buy-in up front. So the people that were actually going to be using it or were part of the team and leading the team with Chris. And I think that was probably the most helpful aspect. But they also knew I was committed to this. And so, I think the pushback was limited because of both of those two factors.
Okay, thank you. One last follow-up. How long did it take you to fully implement?
So Salesforce, that's a great question. I think we started December or January last year. We got it live in March, so a couple months.
Okay, that's not bad. That's
good.
And
that included this quoting as well. And I think that's probably the thing that took some of the time at the end was we changed direction on the quoting software. but the data merge and doing all the upfront work on mapping what we wanted was the key to that success.
Did you know the whole way from the CPQ tool through the Conga tool? Was that your you knew, okay, I want this Conga piece, and then we went to CPQ and Conga, or
No
it was,
CPQ, JW. This is absent of CPQ. This is
Yeah,
basic
this
Sales
is just
Cloud.
standard Salesforce.
okay,
Sorry, John.
thank you.
John, did you notice an uptick in your sales based on your new quoting?
I don't know. I wish I could measure that, right? And so, did you buy this $200,000 machine because the quote looks better? It's a great question. I have to say that it's not hurting us. My guess it's helping us. So there's two interesting metrics that we measure among many things. We're data driven, but the two that I'd push for is number of qualified leads per week, which is not relevant to this. And the second is our win rate on quotes. And so we measure that. We're a year in. My guess is you can ask me that 2 years from now, I'll say that this was hands down, one of the elements that allows us to improve our win rate on quotes.
And because you're adding so much more information into your quote, do you find that there's less back and forth between the customer and the salesperson to finalize the quote because all the information is provided up front?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hidden benefits is that, the level of uncertainty of what we're providing should be greatly reduced.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dan, if I could jump
Cool.
in, just
Yeah, of course.
I presume if margins always were a very competitive market that we're in. So in the background, is the software allowing us to change the margin on the price, or do you have to set that up front? Because not every quote will have necessarily the same margin. So I was just curious to how the flexibility involved with that.
Do you mind if I jump in on this one, John?
No, and I think you should, because we do our pricing offline of this software package. So we manually enter our price, and so we have different analytical tool of measuring our pricing and cost and margin.
But there's kind of a two-part answer. The first part is in base Salesforce, if we're selling a finished good. So in John's case, that particular feeder, right? If that has a price book and it has a price in it, then we can prohibit you from changing that price. And in the quoting section, we can give you a discount level either at the product level or the quote level so that you can drop that within a range, right? Using validation rules to say, I'll let Dan Corbett drop at 10%, but I don't trust him to go 15. Only Peter can go 15%. So we have some control over how that pricing can work inside of Salesforce. If what you're saying is more, this client has a price book that gives them a 35% margin, and this client has a price book that gives them a 36% margin, then that's getting into CPQ. That's a lot more sophisticated, and CPQ kind of helps us handle that within the four walls of Salesforce. Does that make sense?
Yes, you answered my questions. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Anyone else?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and it's a big thank you for showing a different kind of quoting format. We've had the same quoting format since we started in 2016 with very little variation to it, and it really needs an overhaul. So I'm really happy to see what yours looks like. That's fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. John, I can't thank you enough, man. It was just a brilliant presentation. So thank you very much on that. So.
You're welcome. Anytime. I would tell you, this is, I mentioned it before, but for us, this is one of our bigger initiatives on how we feel we can continue to grow this business is quotes that sell. I mean, sometimes you overlook that, but this was a huge help on being able to do it seamlessly. And the guys at BlackIron were fantastic. To give you a little plug, and we continue to use them.
Thanks, Sean. On that high note, let's drop the mic and say thanks to everybody, and we really appreciate it. I'll record this. I did record this. I'm sorry. I'll post this and send you guys the recording if you want to see it, and I'll put times in there so you know when John started talking, so you don't have to listen to me and Peter, ramble on. And I'll put when the demo happened and when the QA, so you can kind of forward through the video to kind of get to those points. So
Yeah, so the plan is that next month we're going to do another one of these a month from now, probably on Salesforce Maps.
Right.
So we'll send some stuff out, but we love the product map, so that's probably what we're going to talk about next.
Great.
all right, everybody. Well, thanks again. A big thank you to John. We really appreciate that.
Thanks, John.
We really appreciate that.
Thank you.